Something you often hear is that double wall tents are better for the winter because they're warmer and they're less prone to condensation. And that's just not my experience at all. I've used a Mountain Hardwear Trango in the winter a few times. I used to own a Sierra Designs Omega, which is what you call a 3+ or a 4-season tent. I've used a Marmot Fortress recently in the last few years, and the Marmot Fortress is really what made me move away from using double wall tents in the winter. And then I've used a bunch of 3-season tents in shoulder season and what you'd consider winter conditions also. The main problem that I've had with double wall winter tents is that they're so prone to accumulate moisture. You'll hear people say, well, the moisture goes through and then it accumulates on the inside of the fly. And that's 100% true in the summer. In the winter, that's just, I've never really experienced that. So you get some moisture that makes it through the tent and then does freeze up on the outside, on the inside of the fly as frost. But you don't really get any liquid condensation in the winter. It's frost. You accumulate a ton of frost. And I've had a lot of really bad experiences with frost. I remember once camping out on Mount Washington at, I think it's called Lion's Head. We camped out right on Lion's Head. There were 2 of us in a Mountain Hardwear Trango. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, it's snowing. It's literally snowing. Like, what is going on? And when I turned on my headlamp, there was about ½ centimeter or 1 centimeter of frost. Very flaky frost all on the inside of the tent, and any little bit of movement was causing this stuff to come off as snow. It was literally, when you turned on your light, it looked like it was snowing in the tent. So the notion to me that someone would say that the moisture goes out through the tent and accumulates on the inside of the fly is just very surprising to me, because anyone who's camped out in the winter has experienced this. And I experienced this so severely with my Marmot Fortress that I just got sick of it. So that tent is actually even designed to have an opening at the top of the tent that has no bug netting to try and vent as much out of that tent as possible. But it's got a lot of solid fabric, and it would accumulate so much frost that it was hard to open and close the zippers from the inside. But to say that in the winter the moisture will go through that bug netting and onto the fly, it just makes no sense to me. Anyone just has to look at it and be in a tent and watch their breath. Their breath is going to hit that mosquito netting. It's going to hit the whole inside of the tent. And sure, some of it's going to make through that inner tent to the fly, but a lot of it's going to hit that. It's going to freeze. Moisture just, you know, the vapor just doesn't cross that netting as well in the winter. And then the moment you get some frost starting to accumulate it, forget it. It's like exponential from there on in. It just starts to pile up. So yeah, for a little while, you're gonna definitely get some moisture passing through, but then once it sort of like nucleates or whatever you want to call it, it piles up and you've got a ton of moisture on that inner tent. And then you have a problem because it's really hard to get rid of it at that point. So it starts to accumulate from the top down, and then it creeps down to the sides, and then it's really hard to avoid touching it and getting it all over your sleeping bag. Whenever you move, that inner tent moves and it shakes frost off kind of like snow and gets all over your stuff. In terms of them being warm, I think it's sort of a false sense of warmth. At a certain point, yeah, it's sort of like blowing on your hands. It's that warm breath. If you get a bunch of people in a tent, it does definitely warm up. But then you're fighting another problem, which is moisture. So that warmth is from warm bodies, warm breath. It's a double-edged sword. You know, it's warmer at first, but then your gear gets all saturated with dampness. So that's just, for me, I'm not looking for a tent to keep me warm. Having experienced those issues with moisture and frost on double wall tents, I decided about 2 years ago to switch over completely to single wall. Now, when I say single wall, I'm talking about a single wall floorless, and that really makes a difference. I think a lot of people are either thinking about a single wall, kind of a trekking pole tent, where it's one of these Dyneema tents that has a floor sewn to the bottom with some mesh around the perimeter, or even potentially what I'd call a single wall assault style mountaineering tent. A single wall floored trekking pole tent is kind of the worst offender in terms of moisture. It's just a tent that has the least movement of air. So first of all, you have sort of a peak design. We're not talking about a tarp. We're talking about some kind of peak design that comes down close to the ground, and then the only place for air to really move is through that perimeter netting. And the netting really stops air from moving. So you've got kind of the worst offender there. So if someone says, I've used a single wall tent in the winter and the moisture and frost was terrible, if it was a single wall floored shelter, like a trekking pole tent, there's absolutely no surprise there. You're gonna have a big problem. What I'm talking about here is single wall floorless, and they have a lot of advantages in my mind. I have two 9x9 pyramid shelters. One is a very simple sort of cottage company made by Bauer, and then the other one is a MSR front range, which is obviously a big company, nicely produced piece of equipment. You know, those two tents, first of all, I have never experienced any kind of real condensation or frost problem. Sometimes they have a thin layer of frost in the morning, but next to nothing. They're much easier to ventilate. It's hard to explain, but the amount of moisture in those tents is so minimal. The other thing that's really important that I do as much as I can, whether it's a double wall or a single wall tent, and I started doing this with my double wall tents, is to just try and keep those doors open as much as possible. Whether it's the inner tent or even the door to the fly. If it's not snowing, if it's not windy, I try and open those doors up, and throughout the night I'll often close the main fly door, but I might leave the zipper zipped down a crack from the top. That lets some moisture escape, and I'll definitely leave the inner tent door open. That just lets the moisture and the air flow more freely and then just get out of the tent. Ultimately, I want to make sure that I get moisture out of the tent as soon as possible.